Hello, my very amazing artists. Today we're going to be working on thinking about the things that bring us comfort that we have in our home. And so today I'm going to be starting with introducing you to my favorite object of comfort in my home, my little stuffed rhinoceros. His name is Amos, and my children gave him to me. And I'm going to tell you about the materials that we're going to be using for today's lesson, things that are going to be very familiar to you, things that you can use easily in your home. So the first thing you're going to need is a pencil. And that part's pretty easy. Most people have a pencil around. If you do, that's great. Mine has an eraser. If you don't have a pencil, but you find a pen somewhere, that works too. I also have out a piece of paper for myself. You can use the back of paper that might be in your recycling. Today we're also going to be using some markers. If you have those, that's fantastic. And if you don't, it's okay. You can stick with a pencil. I'm going to be using some really dried out markers. And I want you to see that even at my house, the markers dry out and my materials aren't perfect. And I want to show you what we're going to do with some dried out markers today by adding water to them. And I have a little paintbrush and a little cup of water. And one thing that's good to check early on is whether or not your markers are washable or not. And sometimes it says right on the marker whether or not it's washable. This one says ultra washable, ultra clean. Okay, and you just give those a little test run when you're ready to get started. You can even do a little tester page before you get started if you have another little piece of scrap paper around where you can draw some lines with some different colors and try out your finger. If you've got just water in your finger, this works too. If you've got water in a brush, that's fantastic also. Either works. I'll try both. With a finger, I'm going to dab on a little water and I'm going to see how far does that so-called ultra washable one really go versus my standard one that liquefies right into a sort of a paint. And it might surprise you. So make sure you take a minute to test that before you get started. Now, with your pencil, you're going to be drawing something in your home that brings you a great deal of comfort. It could be a favorite food. Maybe the thing that brings you comfort is the mac and cheese that your grandpa makes. Maybe the thing that brings you comfort is a special plant that you have in your room that you've always loved. You might even have a name for it. Maybe the thing that brings you comfort is a super cozy bed. Whatever it is that brings you comfort, that is going to be the star of the show today. The person, the place, or the thing that you go to when you want to just feel a little bit better. I'm going to draw my little rhinoceros here, Amos, and I'm going to give him his little smile that he's got. And that is probably about as much as I need to do in pencil. If you don't have markers to be working with at this point, it would be good for you to make some additional things around in pencil to give your the object or the food or the person that you love a little bit of a space to be in. And so feel free to make designs around it. I'm going to switch over now to working in my marker, and I'm going to start with a black marker to outline my rhinoceros here. And I want you to notice, please notice, that my marker is really dry. This is the kind of marker that would send you screaming in the art room coming over and saying, Mrs. Elliott, there is no good black marker. And you know what? If we were just going to be keeping this in marker, we would say, well, that looks to be pretty true. And we would run and get a new marker for you. But for this project, this kind of marker is just perfect. So don't throw these dried markers out. They're just right for a thing like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my next marker, my pink that's kind of dried out, and I'm going to make some big zigzag lines that go all the way around to give Amos a feeling of being the star of the show here. And your markers don't all need to match. This one's called a poster marker by Crayola. It's different than these other markers. I got all kinds of weird art supplies around my house. Some of them are good, some are dried out, some are good because they're dried out. Lots of them don't match, and that's all okay. And I'm going to go right around with some of the some of those zigzag lines again, and I'm going to grab at my yellow and do the same thing. One more zigzag around. This one's pretty bright, but it's on its way out. It's the kind of marker that tricks you. You can draw with it well for just a minute, and then it's going to give up on you. Once I have decorated with my markers all the way around and I feel good about what I've got going on, I'm going to switch over to using either just my finger with water. Will work great, friends. And also, so will a paintbrush. If you're working with just your fingers, then you can see I've been working with my fingers a little bit today. They're kind of messy. If you're working with your fingers, then just like a brush, rinse them in the water between your colors to keep your colors nice and pure. If you're using a brush, same thing. And just like in the art room, when we're using watercolors, I always tell you, start with your lightest and brightest colors before your water gets dirty. That might sound familiar to you. And that's because if I do my blue or my black first before my yellow or my orange, then I know that those colors are gonna be kind of dirty looking. We've all had that feeling of going and drawing with a yellow marker over a black marker and going, what is that color I've just made? So go in that reverse order of lightest to darkest, brightest, cool, actually warmest to coolest too, because we know the cool colors are so powerful. So I'm going to continue just with my water. I'm rinsing, getting new water in between here. Going all the way around Amos the rhinoceros. He's pretty gray in real life. Whoops! Happy accident. Oh well. No problemo. I'm going to let that mistake be. Go all the way around. This is a great moment for you to realize that everybody makes mistakes. We talk about mistake making a lot in the art room. Happens all the time. We encourage it. Get creative. You could think of how to either minimize your mistake by trying to blot that spot if you don't like it, or how to emphasize it if you do. So this is how we're going to be using our markers today with water. It's pretty magical. If you had markers at home and you don't own a watercolor set, well, guess what? You do own a watercolor set because you have a finger and you have water, and you can use those after you use your markers. So if I want to lighten this, by the way, look what I'm doing here, friends. I'm going to scoop a little bit of the extra paint, take my hand and squeeze it out over my water bucket. And I'm going to just pick up a little bit of that extra so that Amos is a little paler. He's kind of a light gray in reality, a light blue gray. And I'm going to bring a little more life to him that way. And I haven't done anything with his horn yet, his rhino horn. So what I'm actually going to do here is get my brush nice and wet, pick up some of this light color where I want him to have some highlights anyway. And I'm just going to bring a little bit of that right into the horn. And I didn't even have to really color that in with my markers because I knew I would just want a nice light color. So that looks pretty good to me. And I kind of love this green that's coming out here. You know, one of the magical things that kids don't realize until they have this happen with a black marker is that black, because it's not a primary color, is made up of so many other colors. Can you see the greens and the blues that come out of that? And I actually find that super magical. So if that is something that you think looks cool too, you could try using it in other places just because you might like how that looks. And as you use your different marker colors, you might be surprised when you add water what colors come out of that marker when you let it start to feather like this, where it starts to go into the water. And I did draw with my marker right on this paper. It's not super wet because that's not great for markers to draw on sopping wet paper, but it is a little bit damp. Just a little bit damp where I was still painting this background. And I think this looks perfect. All right, my friends, when you're done, make sure that your grown-up sends me a picture because I cannot wait to see what things in your home bring you a little comfort.